Hello, I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man. My guest is Nathan Dean. Nathan is an associate solicitor within JMW's Commercial Litigation Department. Now, Nathan, we've probably, many of us, seen the Tinder Swindler, the Netflix documentary. And I wanted to talk more generally, really, about people who might be tricked into loaning money online. I guess the best place to start is right at the beginning. So, is it possible to recover money if you've been tricked into loaning it online?
Hi, Dom. Thank you for having me on JMW's Inside Man. And yes, it is. If you're looking to recover money, which you were previously loaned to someone, then there are, in the main, two potential recourses. The first and most straightforward, I'd say, of them is to establish whether there was a contract for the loan and whether someone is contractually responsible to pay you back. A contract can be written, it can be oral. And if it's not repaid, either within a set time or within a reasonable time, if you didn't agree a date by which it should be repaid, then you could argue that the party that's received the money is in breach of this contract, and you can seek damages from them for failing to repay it to you. If there is further than that, if there is no contract, either by reason of there being nothing in writing or by reason of the words that you agreed orally weren't sufficiently detailed, then all is not lost. You may be able to recover money through a claim in restitution for unjust enrichment, which is essentially arguing that the other party that has received the money has been unjustly enriched at your expense. An example of this is a case I had recently where a client of mine invested in a business in exchange for shares being provided. Now, unfortunately, he paid the money and the shares were never transferred to him. By the time it came to recovering that, it was no longer attractive for our client to receive the shares because the company had become insolvent. And whilst we had a contract that we could seek to enforce to get the shares transferred, that's not what we wanted to do or could do anymore. So what we were able to do was claim the other party had been unjustly enriched, and we were able to recover the money by means of restitution.
Nathan, the internet doesn't necessarily have boundaries. So what happens if somebody's based in another European country? Is it still possible to recover the money?
It's certainly possible. Yep, I'd say the first step is to determine which court has jurisdiction. Now, assuming the contract was formal, both parties were in England and Wales, or the money was provided to parties while they were both in England and Wales, then it will be the courts of England and Wales that have jurisdiction. Assuming you obtain a judgment for the courts in England and Wales, but you then want to move that forward and enforce against assets that are potentially held abroad in other countries, then it's possible to do. It was much more straightforward and wide-ranging before Brexit, as it was dealt with under the recast Brussels regulations. However, since the 31st of December 2020, that's no longer applicable. That said, there are still certain reciprocal arrangements that we have in place with EU member states and with other countries, which means we can enforce the judgments, English judgments in other countries. Conversely, if you obtained a judgment from a court abroad and you wanted to enforce that in the UK, then that is possible also. It's done under the common law in the UK. The principle the UK courts have established is that a foreign judgment creates an implied contract to pay. This means that a party seeking to enforce the judgment must commence proceedings in the appropriate court, and they will usually seek to obtain summary judgment, that being on the basis that the foreign court has already decided the issue, and therefore they have no reasonable prospects of successfully defending a claim in England, and the English courts will therefore move straight to enforcement.
And you mentioned earlier on your client who'd not received the shares, and you were able to get money back for that particular client. How can you help individuals who believe that they're owed money?
So the first thing to do is just get in touch with us, because each case will turn on its own facts. But we're more than happy to review the situation, review the facts of the situation, and see how we can help you. And that may be either through drafting some pre-action correspondence, through alternative dispute resolution, or by ultimately issuing court proceedings. But happy to speak to anyone that has any questions.
Nathan, thank you so much for your insight. If you'd like to speak to Nathan, you can email insideman@jmw.co.uk or call 0161 82 81 999. I'm Dominic Walker, JMW's Inside Man.